Thanks for letting me be a part of it. I want to thank Tyler more than anything else for reaching out and for letting me come and talk to you guys. Nice to have a full house. More importantly, nice to talk to people who are interested in the sports field, whether it's the business side, media side, what have you. So again, just welcome again. Thanks for being here again. So a little bit about myself. One of the very few who's born and raised in San Diego. As Tyler said, you probably have come to a Gulls game. You've come to a Sockers game. You've come somewhere. You probably have heard me. But it's not just public address. I do play-by-play. I do master ceremony events. I've been a podcast host. I've done voiceover work, and I also write. I've been doing this for 14 years. Got my start in student-run television when I was a freshman in high school in 2009. I also wrote for the school newspaper. I moved out of the school I was at, played 3 years of varsity baseball here locally at Kearney High. From 2010 to 2012, I was recruited by Creighton University. It's a faith-based university in Omaha, Nebraska, and was scouted by the White Sox. I took a year off when I got my degree 10 years ago and went into broadcasting, a broadcasting program in LA. But the cool part about it is they work to put you somewhere where you live. So I worked at a very low powered country station. You couldn't hear it across the street out in Alpine. I was on the air for 3 days a week and not just doing sports. I was doing music, weather, traffic on top of sports, and then updating the community in case there was some sort of event going on that had to be noted. So work experience. First one, of course, Tyler said, is at the Gulls. I've been their PA announcer for the past 8 seasons, starting next Friday. And much like minor league baseball, this is the top affiliate for the Anaheim Ducks of the National Hockey League. Every team has an affiliate in this league. So what exactly does a PA announcer do? Some of the examples are listed. So perform all duties and responsibilities associated with the position during all league-associated preseason games, regular season and the playoff games, but also going out into the community. So when we do watch parties where you can come out to a restaurant and watch the game with other fans, 9 times out of 10, I'll be there. We do raffles, we do trivia, but I also add stuff from the home games into the event where I announce goals or penalties. Performing prepared scripts, which is always taken care of by our game ops manager. I just go back in, make sure that everything looks good, make some changes, and experience the hockey flow, but also live production. I work with 2 separate crews during the course of a game. I work with the game ops crew and the officiating crew. So the guys who are working on ice and the people who are working in the penalty box or on press row who are getting the information out there when there's goals, when there's penalties, or stuff that you have to know about if you're watching the game, or if you want to come to further games, we do all that sort of stuff. And of course, observing all the rules and regulations as adopted by the club, which also includes sometimes where I have to go out and dress up in a Star Wars costume to help promote an upcoming home game, which that's also something I've had to do as well. Staying on the public address side, I also work for the San Diego Sockers. If you've never heard of them, they've been around for over 40 years. They've won 16 championships. They just finished off a back-to-back championship season. Next year will be my 10th year with the club. But I was not the PA announcer when I first got the position. I worked my way up from working in game ops. So I was basically the GM's right-hand man. He would say, go and get me coffee, go and do this, go and do that. And I did that for the first 4 or 5 years. I filled in for a couple of games. Then I became the full-time announcer 2016, 2017. I've been there ever since. That's my longest tenured position in my career. And again, I've been a part of 3 championship teams, 2012, 2013, and most recently our COVID shortened year, 2020, 21, and this past year where the team lost 1 game all year, and it was in overtime. On the college side, my main position is at Point Loma Nazarene University, the Division II rank. So I work 2 different roles and work for 6 different teams on the campus. So this includes being in-house PA for volleyball, both soccer teams, and the baseball team, who you may have known, went to the national title game for the D2 ranks last year. They won 51 games last season. We actually had the regional on campus, and every game was packed. It was sold out. We had very good media coverage of the team last season. But also, I jump on the play-by-play side of things for both our men's and women's basketball team. Men's basketball 2019 went to the Division II tournament final, and sadly got beat by a team who had not lost a game all year. They went 40-0. Across town also at the University of San Diego, this is one of my more recent college positions, but again, same exact thing, multiple things going on, volleyball, soccer, baseball for PA, women's basketball on the WCC network. I do back up their PA announcer, who you may know, Mark Neville, is also the director of the Holiday Bowl. So Mark usually goes and will be away for a week, and usually we have someone fill in. I did do softball for a few years up until last season. Then away from announcing, I also write. for San Diego Sports Domination, covering the San Diego Wave. We were actually talking about them. They have a playoff game on Sunday at Snapdragon. And I also did write for the lacrosse team, the San Diego Seals, for a little bit when I had time. Examples of this is mainly I like writing game previews to kind of get people somewhat ready for the game, feature stories on players or how the club is doing or how the teams have been doing over the course of the season, getting quotes during the course of media sessions, and obviously the game recap, where if you weren't at the game, you just want to read about it real quick. I'm big on social media game updates, which I'm sure you guys see a lot when state's playing football or basketball, any of the sports out there, updating people if they're on their phone scrolling through Twitter. But this includes, scoring plays on the soccer side of things. If someone's getting a yellow card or a red card, end of the half, or anything that's developing, like, a player goes down with an injury and want to kind of keep people posted. And then, of course, the throw recap, not limited to the final score of the game, the team records, how they scored, total game attendance. Again, Wave had 32,000 for their first game at Snapdragon. And again, getting quotes from the media or media quotes being given by coaches and players. Podcast hosting is something I did a little bit, but obviously don't have the time with how much my schedule is loaded. But this was more during COVID, where people were diving into podcasts. Maybe you started one, maybe with your friends during the course of the pandemic. So I did one that was called the Quarantine Network. It was started by a coworker of mine who's a DJ here locally in town. We actually had CNN and some of the big worldwide news stations cover us for a little bit because it was something that had kind of sprouted up out of nowhere. I was just doing sports talk, mainly just saying, okay, this has been canceled, this is being moved, and just kind of keeping everyone kind of posted about what was going to be happening with where we were back in March and April of 2020. And then I also helped out with a few friends of mine on what was the MI6 Sports Network. I was the main host of two programs where we did late night recaps for people who maybe were up late, couldn't watch games, and stuff of that caliber. We also, though, did reach 5,000 listens via our podcast app, had 100,000 total during the course of the time that I was there. And we also now are doing one called Intergalactic Sports Entertainment, but we're talking sports, we're talking entertainment news, Marvel, Star Wars, you name it, all that good stuff. Just something else to kind of stay somewhat busy. And then, of course, Master of Ceremonies, emceeing or speaking to a group like you guys here. But as you probably know, this happens at wedding receptions. This picture you see is actually from me working last year at the Cal State Games, which is essentially the state Olympic Games. They used to have the opening ceremonies at Qualcomm, which is no longer around. So the Gulls hosted it at Pechanga Arena, San Diego last season. Away game watch parties. And I also virtually hosted a awards program for PLNU athletics during COVID. We usually do it in person, but again, with how things were going at the rate, we had to do everything virtually at that time. Voiceover is also something I do, mainly with the Gulls. There's a lot of times where I'll get a script and I just record it from home. But you hear a lot of VO work done at amusement parks, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Legoland, what have you. Movies, TV show trailers, radio ads, and even at sporting events. They do a lot of B-roll or a lot of, evacuation videos, for example, at Petco. That's all done voice on tape, essentially is what we call it. Personal experience across the board. So what is the difference? Because I know a lot of people, especially friends of mine who don't know my industry very well, they always say, what is the difference? Well, here's a thorough breakdown. So the public address announcer is the person that you're hearing inside the arena or the stadium. So if you come to a Gulls game or a Sockers game, you're going to be hearing me 9 times out of 10. Notable announcers, Bruce Binkowski, the voice of San Diego sports. Bruce did everything here locally in town, Padres, Chargers, San Diego State. He did the Sockers for a little bit. He did the Gulls for a little bit back in the day. Alex Miniak, San Diego Padres. Brian Main, formerly at San Diego State. Mark Neville, 30 years with USD men's basketball. Lawrence Tanter, he's in the Hall of Fame, and he's been the PA announcer for the Lakers basically since the Showtime era. The play-by-play announcer is who you're hearing on TV, radio, or on the online commentary. Don Arcillo, Valley Sports San Diego, you had on your quiz earlier. Vince Scully's you had earlier on your quiz as well. Chick Kern called 3,338 straight Laker basketball games without missing a single game because it boiled down to the owner at the time, Jack Kent Cook, who told him, because he had missed the Laker game because of weather and he was doing a football game. And Mr. Cook told him, Chick, it's either the Lakers or all this other stuff. I can't have you missing games. And he did not miss a game until he had to go under triple bypass heart surgery in 2002 after they won the championship. And, of course, Joe Buck on ESPN's Monday Night Football and Al Michaels, who you heard on Amazon Prime. But mainly in my mind is remembered more for the miracle on ice in 1980. That was Team USA beating the Soviets 4-3 in Lake Placid, which was not the gold medal game, as a nice little reminder. What got me into sports? Well, it happened when I was 4 years old, believe it or not, way back in 1998. And it was just one random day. My parents tell the story all the time. It's one random day I was sitting on our living room floor when we lived in Pacific Beach. And the voice of San Diego State football and men's basketball, Ted Leitner, was at Channel 8, our CBS station at the time. And as he was giving his report, I turned around and just told my folks, oh my goodness, that's what I want to do. And that was probably one of the coolest people I've met in my time in the industry, because without Ted Leitner, seeing him on TV, I would not be I would not be doing what I've been doing for my entire career. So that was actually after State came played at USD, and he was extremely good with his time, with advice, stopping for the picture and just talking shop. And I haven't really considered anything else other than being in this field. Pros and cons of it, and the one that I take the most pride in, though, and it's the top pro, is rewarding to make a difference in the experiences of athletes' careers. And this is mainly more at the college level than the pro level, because I don't get the interaction like we're having right now with professional athletes, especially with the hockey team, because those guys could be up in Anaheim or somewhere else the following day. But at the college level, though, we're between both Point Loma and USD, it's fulfilling for me to be able to have that interaction with them, even with their families. Notably, my main passion is play-by-play for women's basketball. And it's rewarding for me to be able to talk to them in person, meet them and stuff like that. But more importantly, it's doing the job right, but also it's rewarding because I had a group of friends of mine who were fifth-year seniors because of COVID last year. And their last game, it was like very surreal for me, because that was the first group of freshmen I had when I came into the school after I got hired to do more than just what I was being hired to do, which was baseball. And the bonds are always going to be there. So that's always one thing that I absolutely love. Engaging with fans before or after events. This mainly happens more with hockey and soccer, being able to be out amongst the public after games are over, before games begin, and networking with fellow announcers via the web or in person. I'll get more about that in a second, though. Now, some of the cons, though, and I was kind of struggling to find out, like, what cons would there be, because I've been doing this for 14 years and I've never thought of one bad side of the job. But I think I found three that I know I've experienced firsthand. And the first one, of course, is a lot of late nights or early mornings with events going long or starting early in the day. If you're a night owl like me, you kind of dread getting up for that 10 o'clock game or 11 a.m. game. But mainly the late night part for me, though, is all about preparation. And that's getting rosters put together. That's getting pronunciations right. Make sure you're saying people's names right. Burnout is also a thing I've gone through in the past, especially when schedules get more and more complicated, where there's more events being tacked on. Literally next week, I think I have like 10 events in 6 days. There's a triple header. There's a double header here, 3 games here, 2 games there. So burnout does become a thing. And more importantly, the number 3 thing, though, is missing out on spending time with family, friends, spouses, or etc. Because there's going to be a lot of times, and I've seen this firsthand, though, too, that you may not be able to make your nephew or niece's birthday. You may not be able to make someone's wedding day. You may not be able to do this or do that because of work saying, no, you have to be here. And believe me, that part is the one that eats at me more, because there is no telling how many times in 14 years that I've missed my dad's birthday, my own birthday, my girlfriend's birthday, even for that matter, or anything when it boils down to that. And even missing holidays sometimes, like maybe Christmas, Thanksgiving Day, New Year's Day. So that's when it kind of eats at me a lot. So what does make perhaps my role or my job unique? Multiple roles. I can literally show up tomorrow, as I'm going to, and work as a PA announcer for a women's volleyball match, or the following day I can go and do a football game, or I can do a hockey game or a soccer match. So kind of being a Swiss Army knife is what I would kind of compare it to. Variety. I do have a hand in many different sports, and being able to know a variety of them will open up further opportunities for you. and full plate. When multiple seasons are ongoing, a single day or a single week could have multiple events taking place, sometimes even happening at different locations on that same day. I've pulled this off plenty of times. I've done college basketball games at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, throw on my suit and go to the sports arena and do a hockey game at 7 o'clock that night. I literally just did that last Saturday at USD. I did a volleyball game at noon and went down and did the Gulls preseason game the following later that evening. Some interesting or fun stories. When I was in college, I got a chance to interview 2 big-name women's basketball players when I was just starting out getting my degree. Candace Parker, if you guys don't know, played at Tennessee, was the first overall pick in 2008. She's a 2-time champion, went back and played in Chicago, where she's originally from after spending her time in LA. And this was a sheer project I had to do of try to interview somebody in your field. And so I took a gamble and got it via Twitter, believe it or not. And I was mainly expecting her to probably give me 5, 10, 15 minutes. But to her credit, Candace Parker stayed on the phone line for 45 minutes with me and just basically gave me a whole time capsule of her whole career, from growing up with her brothers, watching the Bulls play in the 90s, playing in high school, college, the pros, you name it. Candace Wiggins, for you guys who don't know, is from San Diego, born and raised here. Her dad, Alan, was actually on the 84 Padres team that lost to Detroit. So Alan Wiggins was the leadoff man behind Tony Gwynn, or in front of Tony Gwynn, during the 84 season. But sadly, her dad passed away years later from AIDS, before people really knew what AIDS was at the time. So this was before she retired in 2015, and her and I still talk to this day, as one of the connections I've kept for such a long time. My first day of college, I was extremely nervous. I was actually on air that day at the station I told you about earlier on in the presentation, and I kind of was a little like, oh, this is all new, basically. But as soon as I kind of got through the first segment, it was all downhill from there. The first Gulls game I did, November of 2015, happened to be because the team's main announcer that they hired was not able to be there. So me being number 2 in line, they called me up and said, hey, we need you to do the game. So I ended up doing that game. That led to doing 3 more games filling in. It ultimately led to me getting the job full time in January of 2016. Meeting Dick Enberg was really cool during the MLB All-Star weekend here in San Diego. So the backstory about meeting Mr. Enberg happened because years ago, a friend of mine and his parents went to a dinner where Jim Nantz from NBC Sports, or CBS Sports, was actually at this event along with Dick Enberg, and they happened to win Jim Nantz's autobiography. So they were going to have Jim sign it, and they did. And they told Jim and Dick, you know, we have a family friend whose son wants to become a broadcaster. Would you mind signing the book for him, and we will give it to him as a gift for whatever it was. So somewhere in my room, I have Jim Nantz's autobiography signed, you know, personalized to Callan. See you at CBS, Jim Nantz on the back cover. To Callan, oh my, Dick Enberg. So I actually asked Mr. Enberg, and I'll get into this more in one of the next slides coming up, about advice. So I'll actually save that. I got a call to the NBA Gatorade League the day after Christmas in 2017 via a fellow announcer, and I'll talk about this too, about networking, who he got a call up to do a Clippers game at Staples Center, and he had me in mind to do the job. But this was in Ontario, California. So nobody in Los Angeles County or the IE wanted to touch this job with a 10-foot pole. So I just said, why not? I'll take the gamble and do it. So I ended up going up to Ontario. My mom came with me. She was sitting right across the floor from me, courtside, and it was really awesome. It was cool because J.J. O'Brien was playing for the Clippers at the time, San Diego State alum. And being able to kind of say, for one day, you got a chance to work in the NBA in some capacity. It may not have been Lakers, Clippers, but it was in the NBA family nonetheless. It reminded me a lot of me working in the AHL for the Gulls, and just in that comparison. But more importantly, the best one, though, my first ever Major League Baseball game came in July of this year. Totally out of the blue, but again, this goes back to networking. So a former boss of mine who worked with the Anaheim Ducks, again, the Ducks are the top affiliate for the Gulls, had just taken a role with the Angels in their in-game entertainment department. And he called me out of the blue and just saying, hey, I know you do baseball. You love baseball. You played the game. I need you to be my PA announcer when the Angels play Houston on July 13th, because both the main announcer and my backup can't make the game. So I had you in mind for being my number 3 guy in line. So I ended up doing the game. And for you baseball fans, it was a Ohtani leadoff and start on the mound night when that happened. And the Angels did win. And it was everything I thought it would be and then some. And it was more of a cool thing because this was a true full circle story. My first ever major league game that I can remember happened to be at Angel Stadium in 1998 when I was 3.5. It was me and my parents, my brother, some of our family friends had gone up to watch the Angels play the Yankees that day. And for my first major league game as a working professional to be at that same stadium is what made that night a lot more special. I had my whole family and friends there too. So if there's any advice I can pass along, because I get asked a lot about advice, no limits. So whatever you do, don't limit yourself to one role or one sport. The more you can do, the more sports you get into, the merrier. Because I think a lot of times, and I've been kind of helping a friend out who's been trying to get into the industry, and he is really big on football. And I'm like, and I told him several times saying, that's great, but try not to just focus on football. Try to get yourself into any sport possible, whatever it may in fact be, whether you know the game a lot or you never watched it at all. This piece of advice came from Dick Enberg. Yes, you can, because this thing that I wrote here is exactly what Dick Enberg told me at that event that I went to in 2016. Yes, you can. The word no should not or never be in your vocabulary when you're in this industry. Say yes to any opportunity you're given. That includes Dick telling me it doesn't matter if it's in a big city, a moderate town, or a very small town in the middle of nowhere. Say yes to any chance you're given. And that's also if it's unpaid, if there's a little chump change being thrown there, if it's minimum wage, or if you're getting paid buku bucks. The word no should never be in your vocabulary. Take every chance you can. We're talking about practice? Yes. If you want to get into voiceover, into announcing of any type, record yourself as often as you can for practice and repetition, because my family can tell you stories of me playing in my backyard and doing my best to lighter impersonation and calling fictional games in my backyard from the time I was 4 until I am now. So practice. No fear. Never be afraid to reach out to anyone for advice if you need help, if you have something you want to have looked at or critiqued. And yes, network. Utilize your online resources, these club meetings that Tyler and the SBI puts on, and network with those in your preferred industry. Just for example, I network with a lot of public address announcers. We literally have our own PA announcer group on Facebook. And I was reaching out for advice today because I've never have done football ever. And I'm doing a game on Saturday at USD. So I reached out and asked for some help. And like right away, it's like 5 people reached out and sent me over their materials and what to do, what not to do. And again, just do not be afraid to reach out, network, ask questions, and you can obviously go from there. If anyone has questions or comments, this is your time to shine. Yes.
Hi, I'm Trent. I'm actually trying to go into sports broadcasting myself.
Awesome.
So you talked about how diversity in sports is very important, with this job, because then you have more opportunities. So you kind of touched on it with the networking, but is there anything else you would tell someone or something that you've done to prepare for a sport that you have said, maybe you've never seen before? If it's a rugby game, you've never watched rugby in your life, how do you prepare for a gig that you said yes to?
So I actually, I'm glad you brought up rugby, because that was a sport that I had never had. I've seen maybe one match when I was in Australia, believe it or not, in 2012. And it's like, you know, a little bit, it's like you're trying to learn on the fly. So this third-party company came in and emailed me about perhaps doing this tournament down in Chula Vista at the Olympic Training Center. I'm like, I've never done it before, but I guess I can try. And so, and thankfully, what was good about it is that the crew I was working with, really wanted to, they were really helpful. But in regards to if you're learning a sport, if you're getting into a new sport, is mainly, it may not go well at first, but as soon as you kind of just get the repetition, I think, you'll be fine. Just in further perspective, last time I did a football game, I was 7 years old. It was a Pop Warner game for a few friends who were playing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Saturday, but I think we'll be okay.
Can you give us like a live hypothetical, like a call of like Ohtani getting home run?
Do you want the in stadium version, or do you want like the TV? Because I haven't done baseball play-by-play in a long time. TV. You know what? I actually think I have something better. Thankfully, a fan who came to the game that I did has the video of my introductions for me to play for you guys now that I think about it. So let me find that real quick. Let's see, versus Houston, 7-15. Let's see here. Now they didn't play the Mariners that day. They played Houston. Yeah. Sadly, my phone's microphone just it didn't sound good when I was recording part of the. Here we go. So a fan got this from the seating bowl. And believe me, it still hasn't sunk in that this actually happened, by the way, still. It's still hard to fathom that that's my voice radiating over like 50,000 seat MLB stadium for a game. Okay, here we go. This is where the fun begins. That's what happens when you make roster moves in the middle of the year and Game Ops doesn't have the time to make a new graphic. So my favorite part about that is, like, a couple days after the game, the funny thing was, a lot of my friends said this is, how awkward would it have been for you, having been, born and raised in San Diego, you root for the Padres. How awkward would it have been for you to have found out like that game would have been the Padres as the visiting team? And you chuckle now and everyone laughs at that. But when that does happen, I say this all the time, is that when that does happen, you have to put aside the fandom, because you have to remember that this particular team is paying me, not this one. So it would have sucked to have been up there just saying third baseman, number 13, Manny Machado, when the Padres come up. But then having to do, pitcher number 17, Shohei Ohtani. That's just that's kind of where the line gets drawn, is that, okay, in this situation, the Angels are paying me, not the hometown team. That's another thing I always like to kind of not drill home, but just kind of remind folks or remind people getting into it is that you have your favorite teams, though, but at the end of the day, when it boils down to who's actually signing off on your game checks, that's who gets your fandom for that day, not for who you root for from where you're from. Anybody else?
It's just like a side question, man. So you say you grew up, were you a Charger fan?
No.
No? But did you listen to Josh Lewin?
I did. I love Josh, and I'm glad he's still doing UCLA basketball. But yeah, I did listen to him and whoever they like that revolving door of analysts they had on the radio. Was with the Mets, yes, yeah. Yes.
You were kind of hitting on a little bit of when you were doing your main shot over Sotani. Is there a different style? I feel like public address announcers, a lot of time you go, there's different styles of them you kind of hear. Is there a certain style you have, or is there actually a different style that kind of goes between people?
I think it's just more of a thing, and this actually comes from Mike Araujo, and Mike is actually the main Angels announcer, but he's also been with the LA Galaxy for about 27, 28 years, however long the club has been around. Is you obviously don't want to directly copycat people, but you want to forge your own style, but you can give or take though too. So what you heard from me though was not actually in the script. That line of "and now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls" came from David Courtney, who was the first announcer I remember hearing, who had been with the Angels and the LA Kings and the Clippers before he sadly passed away right after the Kings won the Cup in 2014. David would always introduce the Angels lineup that way. So as a tribute to him, I brought that line in, but still kind of kept things the same way that Mike or Phil would have done the Angels lineup. Same thing if I was doing, if I ever did a Padres game, it'd be the same way. I wouldn't fully jump on copying Alex, but it'd be something close to it because I think people want to at least still hear the same similar style, but not fully crossing the line where it's a direct copycat type of ordeal. Yes.
Is it difficult to keep fans engaged, especially if it's like a losing team?
On the play-by-play side, absolutely. And I was actually, and me and one of the assistants I worked with who used to play on our women's basketball team at PLNU, she's now our assistant communications rep. Her and I talk about that a lot because I'm trying to get her to be my color analyst during the basketball season. And we've said that a lot, and it can be, but it's more of a thing on the play-by-play side where it's hard because how does one keep the game, I guess, interesting, but it's like 15-0 or it's a 30-point deficit with still 8 minutes to play in the fourth quarter of a basketball game. So it's more of a struggle, and I think it's more of a struggle doing baseball solo. And I've been there, and I was literally there actually back in May, the first game that Point Loma played in the regional. They beat some school 21-4. How am I supposed to keep an audience when you're up 21-4 in the fifth inning or sixth or seventh inning? So it's like, do I dive into history? Do I just, remind folks like what the schedule is going to be? Do I just take a nap? So yes, to your point though, it's difficult, especially if you're by yourself. If you don't have someone with you as a color analyst, that can make the game drag a bit because you don't quite know how to articulate because it's already a foregone conclusion. It's already a 25-point deficit or we're up by 25. So, do you dial things back? Just in perspective. I called a men's game for PLNU during their run to the national title game in 2019 where they hit 17 three-pointers and they just blew this team from Hawaii out of the water. So I'm running out of things to say when they make a three. I'm just like, up for three. Yes. I'm just because they were already up by 35. So there's also a point though to your question, especially if your team is up by a lot, then you kind of begin to back off a little bit on adding in extra lines in. You don't have to drop the cliches and every time that someone throws down a dunk because you're up by 30. I don't want to say start sounding boring, but it can be daunting to keep an audience when it's already like a foregone conclusion. The game's already over. And it's worse though if you're by yourself by far and away.
kind of like a two-part question. One, have you ever, like, you kind of talk about like burning out, and kind of, have you ever like overworked yourself where you did like 3 events one day and then like you still had another event the next day, you lost your voice or whatever? And like, if that has happened, is that something like you consciously make when you're booking these events?
Typically, that does become a thing. I think it's become more of a thing post-COVID because we were all at home and we were just, being couch potatoes, good, bad, or indifferent. But that is a thing, though, where sometimes, and like I said, like I think next week I work Monday and then Wednesday through Saturday, I think, the week of Halloween. And one of those days, there's a triple header. I have 2 soccer games and then a volleyball match. Now, the only good thing about that is I don't have to overstimulate or overuse my voice for the soccer match. The volleyball game is probably where I'll end up going more over the top because we do a thing at Point Loma where every time we get to 5 points, so 5, 10, 15, I yell out, point, and the whole student section yells back Loma. We've been doing that for the whole time I've been at the school. But yes, but mainly at post-COVID, that does become a thing. But at the same time, I feel like I'm obligated to be there as long as my voice sounds fine. I do a lot, though, to keep it somewhat sounding good after a long day, whether it's hot tea, which is my main thing that I usually do. They literally make specialized like cough drops for people who public speak or sing, or they are public speakers for a living or stuff like that. But I kind of have a bit of a regimen of what I do to keep myself going because, this year just feels like there's more being added because of, fans are allowed back into games, you're free to travel and stuff like that. And that we're back to we're back on a regular full season. We're not playing, like reduced games or any of that. But believe me, there's a lot of times where that does become a factor where, okay, maybe I need to take a day off here. Maybe I need to dial it back and maybe take this game off or any of that. And that does become a thing, especially now that we're going into the winter, because hockey is my main one that takes my priority. The colleges they do have priority, but not over the hockey games.
One
Yes.
more question, Brian. We got.
How do you balance such a crazy schedule considering you work for so many teams? Like, do you use planners, calendars, anything to kind of like?
Yeah, a lot of refrigerator calendars and one long Google Sheet doc where, and this has actually happened quite a bit, sadly, where this is just probably just because, I do it either really late at night or, whatever the reason or excuse may be. But there have been times where I have put a event on my calendar that wasn't on the calendar, or it was a away game. I just happened to see that there was a game on this day. But yes, a lot of calendars, planners, my phone, Google Sheets. I literally print out month by month for the fridge, so I know where I'm supposed to be. But unbeknownst to me, I scheduled the game on the 30th when there's no game on the 30th, of this month. So, but sometimes it happens. But I always think though of I always think of it when I do, for example, like I said, I did a volleyball game and then did a hockey game that night. If there is enough time between, in perspective, the game is at noon until 7. Okay, I have to be at the arena no later than 4:30 is my check-in time. No later than 5. This game should be over. If it goes all the way the distance, it should be done by 3. I still have plenty of time to leave USD, get down to the sports arena, and still be on time. Same thing when I'm over at Point Loma. Okay, we play at 2:00 on Saturdays. Game is done by 4:00. I still have half an hour or a full hour to get there on time. So that's never really It can be a factor at some, it can be a factor, but a lot of times it's mainly Google Sheets, phone calendar, refrigerator calendar, and even just going back and just double checking. Because like I said, there was a game that I thought was on the 30th. No game on the 30th. It was on my fridge calendar, but not on one of my other ones. So there's a backup to the backup to the backup to the backup to the backup.
That's a quick one.
No, it's all right.
What's your dream position?
I always say this: the dream position is wherever it takes me. I'm not picky or not sold on this has to be it. I've always long said wherever it takes me. So whether that is ESPN, Bally, Fox, NBC, CBS, or any local platform out there, it's wherever it takes me. And I've long said that and that kind of goes back to the point I brought up though about not limiting yourself or not, being, it has to be this, it has to be this. It's wherever it takes you, and, you can say, money's one thing. For me, it's not really about the money. It's about the experience. And I've long said that for my entire career is it's cool to get paid to go to games and work and stuff like that. But it's more about the experience that you gain, the people that you meet, the people you interact with, the people you network with, the athletes you get to, interact with or watch play, be a part of their career, as I said, which is so rewarding about being a part of their career, especially in college, where, again, they're going, just like you guys are going through classes every day, and then they're trying to play a sport on top of that and just trying to be part of it and make their experience in college that much better. Because there is no telling how many times I hear from families or from the players themselves, though, about how good of a job that I do. Because when they go on the road, it's nowhere close to what they get at home. Because either people don't look at the pronunciation guides, they're not there, it's either they don't look at the pronunciation guide, I'm not being paid, so why am I even here? Or it's more of or they just don't put the time and effort into the event. They're just there just to be there.
All right. Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you guys again very much.